The Etruscans were a people with a distinct language and culture during the period of earliest European writing, in the Mediterranean Iron Age in the second half of the first millennium BC. They ranged over the Po Valley and some of its alpine slopes, southward along the west coast of Italy, most intensely in Etruria, with enclaves as far south as Campania, and inland into the Apennine Mountains. Their prehistory can be traced with certainty to about 1000 BC. At their height about 500 BC, they were a significant maritime power with a presence in Sardinia and the Aegean Sea. At first influential in the formation and conduct of the Roman monarchy, they fought a series of wars with the Roman Republic, and were conquered and integrated into Roman culture. Much of Etruscan religion and mythology became part of classical Roman culture, including the Roman pantheon. The Senate adopted key elements of their religion, which were perpetuated by haruspices and noble Roman families who claimed Etruscan descent, long after the general population had forgotten the language. In the last years of the Roman Republic, the religion began to fall out of favor and was satirized by such notable public figures as Marcus Tullius, Cicero, the Julio-Claudians, especially Claudius, who claimed a remote Etruscan descent, maintained a knowledge of the language and religion for a short time longer, but this practice soon ceased. A number of canonical works in the Etruscan language survived until the middle of the first millennium AD, but were destroyed by the ravages of time and by Christian elements in Roman society. Polytheistic belief system. The Etruscan system of belief was an immanent polytheism, that is, all visible phenomena were considered to be manifestations of divine power, and that power was embodied in deities who acted continually on the world but could be dissuaded or persuaded by mortal men. Long after the assimilation of the Etruscans, Seneca the Younger said that the difference between the Romans and the Etruscans was that whereas we believe lightning to be released as a result of the collision of clouds, they believe that the clouds collide so as to release lightning. For as they attribute all to deity, they are led to believe not that things have a meaning insofar as they occur, but rather that they occur because they must have a meaning. Spirits and deities around the mun or muni, or tombs, were the man or mani, the souls of the ancestors. In iconography after the 5th century BC, the deceased are shown traveling to the underworld. In several instances of Etruscan art, such as in the François tomb in Volchi, a spirit of the dead is identified by the term hinthiel, literally, underneath. A god was called an Ais, which in the plural is Azar. The abode of a god was a fan warluth, a sacred place, such as a favi, a grave or temple. There, one would need to make a felia, or offering. 3 layers of deities are portrayed in Etruscan art. One appears to be lesser divinities of an indigenous origin. Cathar and Usil, the sun, Tivr, the moon, Selvans, a civil god, Turun, the goddess of love, Larin, the god of war, Lynth, the goddess of death, Maris, Thalna, terms, and the god Fuflunce, whose name is related in some unknown way to the city of Populonia and the Populus Romanus. Ruling over them were higher deities that seem to reflect the Indo-European system. Tin or Tinia, the sky, Uni his wife, and Sel, the earth goddess. As a third layer, the Greek gods were adopted by the Etruscan system during the Etruscan Orientalizing period of 750–600 BC. Examples are Aritimi, Menva, and Pacha, and over time the primary trinity became Tinia, Uni and Menva. List of Etruscan mythological figures, seers and divinations. The Etruscans believed their religion had been revealed to them by seers, the 2 main ones being Tarjas, a childlike figure born from tilled land who was immediately gifted with prescience, and Vagaya, a female figure. The Etruscans believed in intimate contact with divinity. They did nothing without proper consultation with the gods and signs from them. These practices were taken over in total by the Romans. Etruscan Disciplina. The Etruscan scriptures were a corpus of texts termed the Etruscan Disciplina. This name appears in Valerius Maximus, and Marcus Tullius Cicero refers to a disciplina in his writings on the subject. Massimo Pallottino summarizes the known scriptures as the Libri Hieruspicini, containing the theory and rules of divination from animal entrails, the Libri Fulgurales, describing divination from lightning strikes, and the Libri Ritualis. The last was composed of the Libri Fatala, detailing the religiously correct methods of founding cities and shrines, draining fields, formulating laws and ordinances, measuring space and dividing time, the Libri Ascerentici, dealing with the hereafter, and the Libri Ostentaria, containing rules for interpreting prodigies. The revelations of the prophet Tajas were given in the Libri Tagetici, which included the Libri Hieruspicini and the Ascerentici, and those of the prophetess Vagaia in the Libri Vagaici, which included the Libri Fulgurales and part of the Libri Ritualis. These works did not present prophecies or scriptures in the ordinary sense. The Etruscan Disciplina foretold nothing itself. The Etruscans appear to have had no systematic ethics or religion and no great visions. Instead, they concentrated on the problem of the will of the gods. If the gods created the universe and man and have a will and a plan for everyone and everything in it, why did they not devise a system for communicating that will in a clear manner? The Etruscans accepted the inscrutability of their gods' wills. They did not attempt to rationalize or explain divine actions or formulate any doctrines of the gods' intentions. As answer to the problem of ascertaining the divine will, they developed an elaborate system of divination, that is, they believed the gods offer a perpetual stream of signs in the phenomena of daily life, which if read rightly can direct man's affairs. These revelations may not be otherwise understandable and may not be pleasant or easy, but are perilous to doubt. The Etruscan Disciplina therefore was mainly a set of rules for the conduct of all sorts of divination. Pallottino calls it a religious and political constitution. It does not dictate what laws shall be made or how men are to behave, but rather elaborates rules for asking the gods these questions and receiving answers. Cicero said, "For a hasty acceptance of an erroneous opinion is discreditable in any case, and especially so in an inquiry as to how much weight should be given to auspices, to sacred rites, and to religious observances, for we run the risk of committing a crime against the gods if we disregard them, or of becoming involved in old women's superstition if we approve them." He then quipped, regarding divination from the singing of frogs, "Who could suppose that frogs had this foresight? And yet they do have by nature some faculty of premonition, clear enough of itself, but too dark for human comprehension." Priests and officials' divinatory inquiries according to discipline were conducted by priests whom the Romans called haruspices or sacerdotes. Tarquinii had a college of 60 of them. The Etruscans, as evidenced by the inscriptions, used several words: Capon, Maru, Eisnev, Hatrinque. They called the art of haruspices Ichnethric. A special magistrate, the Setchis, looked after the Setra or wrath, sacred things. Every man, however, had his religious responsibilities, which were expressed in an alumnathi or slekakes, a sacred society. No public event was conducted without the Netzvis, the haruspex, or his female equivalent, the Nethra, who would read the bumps on the liver of a properly sacrificed sheep. We have a model of a liver made of bronze, whose religious significance is still a matter of heated debate, marked into sections which perhaps are meant to explain what a bump in that region would mean. Divination through haruspice is a tradition originating from the Fertile Crescent, afterlife. Etruscan beliefs concerning the hereafter appear to be an amalgam of influences. The Etruscans shared general early Mediterranean beliefs, such as the Egyptian belief that survival and prosperity in the hereafter depend on the treatment of the deceased's remains. Etruscan tombs imitated domestic structures and were characterized by spacious chambers, wall paintings and grave furniture. In the tomb, especially on the sarcophagus, was a representation of the deceased in his or her prime, often with a spouse. Not everyone had a sarcophagus. Sometimes the deceased was laid out on a stone bench. As the Etruscans practiced mixed inhumation and cremation rites, cremated ashes and bones might be put into an urn in the shapes of a house or a representation of the deceased. Funerary home at Banditargia with couches. Funerary home at Populonia. Sarcophagus from Siena. Sarcophagus from Chiusi. Sarcophagus. Burial urn. Urn from Chiusi. In addition to the world still influenced by terrestrial affairs was a transmigrational world beyond the grave, patterned after the Greek Hades. It was ruled by Aita, and the deceased was guided there by Charon, the equivalent of death, who was blue and wielded a hammer. The Etruscan Hades was populated by Greek mythological figures and a few such as Tucholcha, of composite appearance.